Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Bridget Daisy and today we're moving into our preteens room to give it a little bit of a facelift. One of the first things that we'll do is paint the walls. She's picked out a lilac color that she wants to put up there, and we're also going to move into the room a little bit. And as you might be able to see behind me here, this curtain rod is coming off the wall a little bit. And I've tried a couple times to re-secure it, and it just doesn't want to stay. So we're going to go ahead and cut the drywall open and put a little bit of support back there. And then we'll get that patched up before we can paint back on that wall. And right beside me here, on this little wall you see when you walk in the room, we have a craft project planned that we're going to do up here. And that'll give our daughter a spot to hang all of her cards and all of her goodies up there. And then as we come back into the room, behind her bed, I will be building a shelf behind it. We'll put a little bit of electrical in there, and that way she'll be able to charge her devices right there, keep her remotes handy, all of that good stuff. That way we'll also be able to get rid of her nightstand, because right now we have a little bit too much furniture in this room. So we're looking to get rid of the nightstand, but replace that storage for her. And then finally, we will be painting the closet doors behind us here. We're going to paint those black to match the rest of the house. That one might not happen today. The weather's not great, and I'd prefer to take those outside and spray them with the paint gun, so we might save that one for a couple days down the road. For right now, we're going to get started on patching up the wall and getting the curtain rod all straightened out, and then we'll be able to get started with the paint. Now, before I could even start the repair, there was a little interruption. I stepped out of the room for maybe 60 seconds, and when I came back, my kiddo had climbed right up the ladder I was using. This girl is part monkey. If it can be climbed, she's on it. By the time I got back in, she was already back on her bed like nothing happened. If it hadn't been caught on video, I probably would have never even known. Anyway, back to the wall. So, this whole project started thanks to a certain someone's creative decorating idea. My daughter decided that the curtain rod would be the perfect place to line up some of her stuffed animals. Unfortunately, the curtain rod didn't agree. Let's just say it lost the battle, and we ended up with a curtain, a pile of plushies, and one sad, droopy bracket barely hanging onto the wall. So, it's time to fix it. First, I take down the curtain, then the rod, and finally that loose bracket. And once that came off, yep, there was a pretty decent hole in the wall. Not just a dab of spackle situation either. But no worries, we'll get it looking brand new again. I grabbed my multi-tool and started cutting neat, straight lines around the damaged area. The goal here is to make a nice clean rectangle. It's way easier to patch something square than a random crater-shaped hole. Plus, clean edges help everything fit together smoothly later. Once that piece of drywall was out, I needed to give the curtain rod bracket something solid to grab onto. So I took a small piece of 1x4 wood and carefully wiggled it into place behind the drywall. This little piece of wood will act as the backing for both the drywall patch and the curtain rod when it goes back up. No more wobbly brackets after this fix. I screwed the 1x4 into place through the drywall, making sure it was nice and tight. Then I reattached the piece of drywall I'd cut out earlier, securing it to the wall with drywall screws into the new backing board. Now it's time for the patching part. I start by filling in that large hole left behind by the bracket with joint compound, pressing it in so it completely fills the space. Then I add drywall tape over the seams and across the middle to help prevent cracking once it dries. After that, I go over everything with another layer of joint compound, smoothing it out and feathering the edges so it'll blend seamlessly once painted. At this point, it doesn't look perfect, but trust the process. Once it dries, I'll sand it smooth and add a second coat of compound, let that dry, and sand again for a flawless finish. Now, you might notice I'm not rushing to paint this wall right away. That's actually on purpose. I'm saving this wall for last so the patch has plenty of time to dry completely, getting all of its sanding and second coats done, and be absolutely perfect before the final paint goes on. Patience definitely pays off here. As I'm finishing up the last bit of prep for paint, look who decides to join the project. Our tiny kitten. She's growing so fast, I might have to come up with a new nickname soon. She's curious about everything, and yes, she's getting in the way a little bit, but she's so cute, I can't even be mad about it. Once the prep's done, it's finally time for paint. Here's the color we're using. Isn't it just the prettiest shade for a girl's room? It's soft, cheerful, and I think it's going to make this room feel so fresh and cozy. For most of the cut-in, I'm using my favorite little gadget, the Paint Edger tool. I love this thing. It saves so much time because I don't have to tape off the ceiling or the trim. It's a little tricky working around the LED strip up top, but even with that, it's giving me a super crisp, clean line. Once the edges are done, it's roller time. I actually bought this extension rod for a future stairway project, but wow, it's already paying off. So many fewer trips up the ladder, and my arms are definitely thanking me. The color's looking even better as it goes on, and the coverage with this paint is surprisingly good. I'm cruising right along and feeling great, and then equipment failure, because, of course, no project is complete without a little bit of chaos. Oh, well, that sucks though.
Would you just do something about it?
Not terribly, terribly bad. It just fell off the.
Oh, but now you gotta be careful not to step in the.
Yeah. Oh, I think this just broke.
Do we have any of this?
Yes. Can I just get it back in there for now, I wonder? No, it's just gonna fall right back off. All right, well, I'm gonna get messy.
Or if you rotate it, put the other end in there.
Gotta go that way.
Nope, it's gonna get a new thingy.
No, it's not this part that broke.
This part?
It's this part, yeah.
Or this part?
It's the handle and the.
Oh, and this frame?
I gotta go wash my hands up.
Would you like me to turn it off?
Do you want a handshake? For some reason, my daughter didn't want a paint covered handshake. I can't imagine why, but I did manage to recruit her to help with painting the walls, so I'll take that as a win. She's doing great, and it's always more fun to have a helper. As the paint goes on the second wall, I'm getting really excited to see how the black closet doors are going to look against it. I've never loved this gray color. It came with the house, and every door was painted this same shade. So it's been a slow but steady mission to replace it with something a little bit bolder and more modern. I've got a little over half of these doors done now, but I'm definitely racing against the weather. The temps are starting to dip, and painting doors outside in the cold sounds like no fun at all. So here's hoping I can squeeze in the rest before winter fully sets in. For the first day of this project, we're only painting these first two walls. The game plan for the rest is. No, I'm going to go back to the beginning so that we can have the second coat done, put the furniture back, and then we'll have to move this furniture away from the wall. With the plan in place, it's time to move on to the second coat on the first two walls. The first coat covered so well that this one's just a light touch-up, more of a polish than a full paint job. I've got some help for the first half, and we're moving right along. It's amazing how much faster painting goes with a helper. But once my helper takes off, I pick up where we left off and quickly wrap up the second coat. The color's looking smooth, the coverage is perfect, and I'm feeling pretty proud of how these walls are turning out. Two down, two to go. It's looking so good already. Now it's time to put this half of the room back together. First up, I clean up all the drop cloths. Always satisfying to see the clear floor again. Then we move the cubby shelf back into place and reattach the shelf above it to the wall. It already feels so much more like a finished space with those pieces back where they belong. Once the shelves are settled, it's time to get the bed back into position. The room instantly starts feeling cozy again. Finally, all the little trinkets, toys, and decor go back on display. And just like that, this side of the room feels clean and organized, ready for the next phase of the project. It's a little bit nicer day today, so we're going to go ahead and take the doors outside and get those painted black. Whoop whoop! First, I start by removing the handles. Once that's done, I take the door right off the hinges. Now, instead of removing the hinges completely, I like to leave them attached to the wall. It saves time and keeps everything lined up perfectly for when it's time to put the door back on later. In a future video, we're going to be building a closet system to organize this chaos. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Next, I bring the doors outside for paint. It's like a little door parade. I don't want to get paint on our good sawhorses, so I'm improvising with a storage bin. It's not fancy, but it works. Time for some paint clouds. With everything prepped and ready, I can finally start painting. I've been waiting for this step, but of course, it's rather a windy day for a paint sprayer. Not exactly ideal conditions, but I'm running out of days before winter rolls in, so I'm going for it anyway. At some point, you just have to stop waiting and start painting. The wind definitely made things interesting. A little extra paint floating off into the breeze. I'm confident I used a bit more paint than usual because of it. Even with the wind working against me, the sprayer still does a great job laying down a smooth coat. I go over each side twice, giving it time to dry in between, and by the end, everything looks nice and even. The finish is smooth, clean, and totally worth braving the elements for. A little wind, a little overspray, and a lot of patience. When it's all done, the doors look great and are ready to be put back in place. Once I haul the doors back upstairs, it's time to get them rehung. Now I'm using a very professional tool to hold the door off the floor while I secure the first couple of screws. My toe. Yep, you heard that right. I don't actually recommend this method. It wasn't exactly comfortable, but hey, it got the job done. With the doors closed, the clutter is out of sight, at least until we can put a proper organization system in place. I have to say, I'm absolutely loving how the black doors look against these purple walls. The contrast is amazing. It's so much better now. It feels clean, bold, and just right. But before we move on to the next step, it's time to take a little break and refuel. It's dinner time.
And now, as my wife paints that room a very, very mainly shade of purple, I'm working on dinner. Pretty simple dinner tonight. I started this morning by seasoning these prime bone-in pork chops. Then we have a twice baked potato, typical whipped potato in the middle with some chives and cheddar, sour cream, salt, pepper, etc. And some beef tallow with some sea salt.
Dinner was delicious. But now we need to sand the rest of this wall patch where the curtain rod used to be. This is the second coat of joint compound, so once it's smooth, we'll be ready for paint. Then it's on to the final two walls. They'll each get two coats for a nice even finish. It's finally starting to come together in here. So while we keep rolling on that paint, let's switch things up with a little music. Here's a quick look at the room with all the paint complete. It already feels so much happier in here. We still have a bit of decorating to do and that small craft project to finish up. But for now, it's onto the shelf behind the bed. This is the project I've been most looking forward to. Here are my plans. Well, sort of. I figured this design was simple enough that I didn't need anything fancy, so I just made this quick sketch to go off of. To get started, I'm taping my two longboards together. That way they'll be exactly the same size once they're cut. After measuring the length, I cut them down on the miter saw, then set them aside and move on to the smaller pieces. Instead of measuring each one, I just use the first cut as a guide so everything matches up perfectly. And finally, I cut down the leg for the side of the shelf. It's really more for looks than support, but it'll give the whole piece a nice finished touch. Due to a little bit of technical trouble, I lost a bit of footage, but since you last saw, I have sanded down all the boards that you see for the shelf upstairs and put one coat of paint on there. And today I'm going to work on trying to match the stain that's already on the top of the desk and the cubby storage upstairs. Try to get that to match as close as possible. I'm going to go ahead and get a second coat on these and work on mixing a couple stains, see how close we can get that color. Just going to use a piece of scrap wood so we can test out the stain color on there. Alright, so this is what it looks like right next to the current furniture up here. I think we need to make it a little bit darker, so before we actually stain, I'll mix in a little bit more of the darker stain. Back at the workbench, I add a little more of the darker color and give it a good stir. Then I grab a fresh piece of scrap wood to test it out on. Okay, this is looking way better. I'm way happier with how this turned out. Let's go ahead and check this off the to-do list. Since we lost the first coat footage, we're jumping right into the second coat of white on all of the pieces. There's something so satisfying about this part. It's when the project finally starts to look real. I'm using a small foam roller for these since they're not assembled yet, so no corners to fuss with. And a quick tip, thin coats always win. It may take a little longer, but the finish turns out way smoother. It's tempting to glob it all on and be done, but that's when you end up with drips and texture. This paint color is the same as the trim in the room, so everything will tie together once it's up. Next up, some quick cuts on the table saw to size down the main boards for the top shelf. Then over to the miter saw for all the angled cuts. This is where it starts to feel like a puzzle, except with power tools and sawdust. I clamp the pieces for the top together and mark out where the hole for the electrical will be. Now for trim. I attach the long front piece first with the nail gun. It's always my favorite part because it comes together so fast. Then I add the smaller trim piece on the side to finish off the edge. Once all the trim's in place, it's time to fill every little nail hole and crack. This part isn't glamorous, but it makes such a difference when you sand it smooth. I'm just using a lightweight filler and a small putty knife. It dries fast and sands down easily. Finally, I use the multi-tool to cut out the section for the recessed electrical panel. This tool makes it super easy to get clean, square cuts without having to break out the jigsaw, especially since that's one of the few tools I don't have. Once that's done, everything's ready for final touch-ups before assembly, which means we need to move on to sanding. I've just started sanding when it hits me. Something isn't right. Oh crap. I just realized I built this backwards. What you just saw me realize is mistake number one. Turns out the decorative trim was supposed to go on this end, and the plain side butts up against the wall. But of course, I did the exact opposite. Whoops. To fix the issue, I removed the front and side trim, pulled out the nails, reclamped the frame, re-nailed everything, filled the holes again, and finally got back to the sanding I was doing when I realized the problem. I'm using 180 grit sandpaper to prep the wood. It smooths the surface and gets it ready for the stain. Once that's done, I head back to the other side of the garage to finish up the pieces getting paint. I'm using Sherwin-Williams cabinet paint in bright white. I really like this paint because it levels out beautifully and gives a super smooth, durable finish, perfect for high-use areas. You might remember this is also the paint that I used on the laundry room cabinets. It has great coverage, but since I didn't use any primer, these pieces ended up needing 3 coats for that crisp, solid white look. Most only needed paint on one side though, since the other will be hidden once everything is assembled. Back at my staining station, I set to work adding the second coat of stain to the top piece. The first coat already made the wood grain pop, but the second coat really brings out a rich, even tone I was aiming for. One of the stains that I used for mixing had polyurethane already mixed in, so we get to skip that step on this project. And we're keeping it from being too glossy anyways, since we want it to match the existing furniture. With the finish complete on almost all of the pieces, I get out the Craig jig to make some pocket holes in preparation for assembly. This makes putting everything together much easier and ensures a strong, clean connection without any visible screws. Once the pocket holes are drilled, it's time to move to assembly. I start by clamping the first piece to hold it in place while I get the screws in. Next, I work down to the center supports. These will not only hold everything together, but also hide the recessed power strip so that the front looks neat and finished. Even though the stain on the top is still a bit wet, I couldn't resist bringing it over for a test fit. Who can resist a sneak peek at what the finished project will look like? While I was checking it out, my supervisors brought a surprise. But since the tiny kitten tried to make a break for it, they headed back inside. With the official seal of approval, I set the top aside for now. There's still a bit of work to do on the base before it can be fully connected. I added a couple screws to the pocket holes in the front. These next screws will be covered by the top, so after pre-drilling, regular screws worked just fine. Next up, I ran some scrap glue on through the table saw to cut it down to size. Full disclosure, I forgot my safety glasses here, so don't be like me. Protect your eyes whenever you're cutting wood. Based on what I had on hand, I separated the back into 2 sections, which meant 2 passes through the table saw. Then I worked on the shelf leg. I wanted the back to have a notch to sit into, so I ran just the top edge through the saw to notch it out. It took a couple of passes to get the right length. This will be hidden behind the shelf, so it only needed to be approximate, but it was important to make sure that it wasn't too short. Finally, I ran the nailer board through the table saw to cut it down to size. No precise measurement here. I just eyeballed it and made it as narrow as possible. Now that all the back pieces are cut, it's time to assemble the back of the shelf. I started by putting pocket holes in the nailer boards, then secured the first one in place, followed by the first backer board. I tried using the nail gun on the ends, but the nails I have were too long for most of it, so I grabbed a staple gun for a temporary hold. Off camera, I went back and secured everything with small screws for a more permanent connection. With assembly complete, the last step before moving upstairs is painting the back pieces white. After that, it's ready for installation and the shelf will finally come together. Next up, I marked out the studs on the wall using the Wallbot stud finder. It's a pretty cool little gadget. It connects to your phone and displays an image when you're right on a stud. I find it to be easier and more accurate than a traditional stud finder. Once that was done, I brought the shelf up and started attaching it to the wall. Before securing the second side, I grabbed my level just to make sure everything was perfectly straight, then attached that side through the nailer board. I fed the electrical cord through the hole in the bottom of the board and then drilled into the remaining 2 studs. But then I quickly realized I needed to loosen all the screws because, of course, I'd forgotten to fit the electrical panel into the top piece first. So I loosened everything up, slid the cord down through the holes in the bottom part of the shelf, and once all the pieces were finally in the right order, I resecured everything through the nailer board and into the studs. With the bottom locked in, I discovered mistake number 2. In my head, the top piece was supposed to sit flush with the leg on the right side, but the way I built it, it actually overhangs the leg, leaving about an inch of a gap on the left side. And my electrical panel no longer centered. This time, though, I decided I wasn't going backwards. I think I can fix this. So after nailing the top into place, I started patching in the left end and hopped onto Amazon to order a longer electrical panel. The first step in fixing this mistake was patching in some wood to fill the gap. After that was in place, I sanded it down nice and smooth and filled the crack with wood filler. After that dried, I gave it another quick sand and added 2 coats of stain to blend the patch in. I also added a small white trim piece along the edge so that all of the shelf goes all the way to the wall. Once my Amazon order arrived, I grabbed the multi-tool and cut a larger opening for the electrical panel, then swapped in the longer power strip, this time in black so it blends better. It's still not perfectly centered, but it's close enough so that it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb anymore. And with that, the shelf is finally done. Some projects go smoothly from start to finish. This was definitely not one of them, but I'm so happy with how it turned out. All of the frustration was absolutely worth it. With the shelf complete, it's time to get the curtains back on the wall. I started by mounting the bracket directly into the wood that's now behind the drywall, nice and sturdy. Then it's time for the new curtains. The kiddo picked these out herself. They're a bit more fun and definitely more kid-friendly. Plus, she loves everything cats. The bracket gave me a little bit of trouble. I'm pretty sure it ended up just slightly unlevel, but nothing a small hammer couldn't solve. Brute force for the win. Next up, it's time to decorate the walls. First, I hung this welcome sign. I marked out where the brackets are located using blue tape, which made the installation a lot easier. The kiddo actually painted this sign a few weeks ago, and we added the letters with the Cricut. It turned out so cute. Now, every time she sees it on the wall, she can feel proud knowing she made most of it herself. With that done, there's just one last craft project before we can officially call this room finished. I started with a scrap piece of wood that I'd already painted white, and then decorated it with a few cat cutouts, also made with the Cricut, of course. Once the top looked good, I strung some rainbow bracelet string, tied on a few hooks with knots, and added small fishing weights at the ends to hold everything in place. This gives our daughter the perfect spot to display all of her cards and mementos. And with that, this room is officially complete. The project definitely came with its challenges, but it turned out better than I imagined. Seeing it all finished and seeing her face light up made every minute worth it. I hope this inspires you to take on your own room remodel. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Next week, we'll head back to the backyard for a gazebo assembly, and soon we'll be wrapping up the finishing touches in the laundry room. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next one.